term GTA clone go out of fashion. There used to be a time where every game where you could hijack cars and shoot pedestrians was called a GTA clone, but at some point we finally realised how unhelpful a term that actually is. Open world crime simulators are as worthy a genre as anything else, and the idea that every single one of them should have to be compared to GTA is incredibly reductive for talking about the specifics of what makes Mafia or Sleeping Dogs or Watch Dogs or even GTA itself unique and interesting. These are all very different games with very different artistic goals. To reduce them to clones of GTA that all they're good for is emulating the gold standard that is Grand Theft Auto, it's kind of insulting. And so it goes for Saints Row, the GTA clone that hated the label so much it literally went to space to try and escape it. Saints Row is one of the most confusing franchises in the entire industry. 7 games, several of which with multiple releases, all of which entirely different from the one before, except for a rigorous commitment to continuity that wants nothing to do with it. In 2023, what does Saints Row even mean anymore? Is it the franchise where you bury a guy alive for crashing a wake? Is it the franchise where you get into a gimp chariot race with a pimp who talks only in song? Is it the franchise where you shoot aliens in the Matrix with a gun that shoots dubstep? Is it a franchise about superheroes? Is it a franchise about going to hell? Is it a franchise about friendship? It's all of these things. And it's also none of these things. It's a mess is what it is, so let's escape back to a simpler time. The year is 2006. Baggy jeans were all the rage, a new console generation has just released, and a little game called Saints Row has just made its debut. When I was a kid, Saints Row was a go-to game for me and my brother. We would sit and play it for hours, swapping between our saves. I had the streets of Stillwater memorised, and there's still so many lines in this game that are just permanently stuck in my head because I just played the game that much. Now, obviously, we were far too young to be playing this game where you shoot hookers and someone drops the N-word every 5 minutes or so. But frankly, the things that I always saw as mature and adult when I was a kid are actually, going back to it as an adult, the most immature elements of the game. Saints Row may have an 18+ rating on the box, but in the actual playing of it, this is a game for angry, horny, 13-year-old boys. Like me. This game is exceptionally edgy. But beneath it all, it's actually a very interesting, very forward-thinking title that deserves a lot more credit than it gets. So, let's talk about opening a world. Let's talk about Saints Row. In Saints Row, you take on the role of a fully customizable, almost silent protagonist referred to only as the player, which is very clever, you see, because you're playing the game in real life, but also player is cool urban gangsta slang. After almost losing your life to street violence, you're saved by a guy called Julius, who invites you to solve the street violence problem with more street violence, and so the story of the Third Street Saints begins. Outside of the opening and ending missions, the story of Saints Row unfolds in a completely non-linear way. There are 3 separate campaigns to complete, one for each rival gang, and you can go about doing them in whichever order you want. Focus on one gang at a time or spread it all around, it's entirely up to you. That non-linearity is more complicated than you might think, and it contributes to a philosophy of design that is absolutely key to the way this game functions. Everything matters. Beyond the story, Saints Row has a wide variety of side activities to do. Street racing, hijacking cars, becoming a hitman, escorting drug dealers, stealing prostitutes from other pimps like their sheep. Forget I said that, nothing to see here, we're not talking about that yet, it's too early. The catch is, these aren't side activities in the traditional sense thanks to the respect system. In order to complete story missions in Saints Row, you need respect. Each level of respect grants access to one mission, and the primary way to gain respect is the side activities. You can go and do a ton of side activities right from the start and not have to worry about it again, but the intended mode of play is a cycle where you go off to do some side hustles between the main story missions. Fully completing a side activity will also provide some other bonus, like a permanent health upgrade or a shiny new car. Customization is also factored into this philosophy. You can complete the whole game wearing the default black t-shirt and jeans combo, but you'll gain bonus respect for wearing nicer clothes, and even more on top of that for wearing the gang's colour, purple. Even collectibles feature a direct reward. Tracking down all the tagging locations will give you extra stamina and eventually unlimited sprint. And tracking down all the CDs will unlock exclusive songs that were produced just for this game, incredibly. All of this pales in comparison to my favourite feature in the whole game, your extremely dated 2006 cell phone. Look at this thing. It brings back memories, doesn't it? But that's not why I love it. I love it because if you see any number out in the city, you can dial it. Most of them are jokes or Easter eggs, but some of them actually provide services. Like you can call 911 and an ambulance will actually show up and treat your wounds. Or you can call a taxi and it will actually take you wherever you want to go for a small fee. This philosophy of game design is why the label of GTA clone is so unhelpful. Yes, the core gameplay of driving and shooting are, on a surface level, similar to a GTA game. But when you get into how the game actually functions, Saints Row is very different to GTA. It's much more focused on the game side of the spectrum, with piles of unlockables, a garage of infinite cars, and of course, a custom protagonist. GTA cares more about its player character. Customization is limited to things that Niko Bellic or, the biker guy would actually wear. And at least in the modern GTA games, there's a commitment to some sort of realism. You don't get an infinite garage, you get a parking space. I'm not saying that one of these approaches is better than the other, but they are different, and that difference is important. With that being said, this game is 15 years old, and it's really starting to show. The visuals, obviously, everything looks like a big coloured blob these days, and Thunderstorm stand out especially as looking just awful. But more importantly, the game itself has not aged gracefully, primarily because of some, absolutely baffling control decisions. I'm not sure how I'm going to show this visually, but I'll try my best. So, standard in almost any driving game is to use the triggers for accelerate and reverse, and that's standard for a reason. It makes sense. Triggers are the only part of a controller that you can actually control the speed of. Slam it down and you'll accelerate quickly, move it slow and you'll accelerate slowly. In Saints Row, the default acceleration in cars is A, because A for accelerate, I guess. A is a button. It has no haptic feedback. It's a simple on or off deal. You can go full blast, or you can not go. More importantly, because of the way hands work, it's very uncomfortable to hold the A button and move the camera at the same time, because those two actions are usually done with the thumb. Your thumb can't be in two places at once, so you end up in this weird claw-like position. The reason they did it this way, I assume, is because you're going to be doing a lot of shooting from cars in this game, so instead of acceleration, the trigger is tied to shooting, but trying to hold A, spin the camera to where the bad guys are, and shoot with the trigger at the same time is extremely hard and uncomfortable to do. So, what are the alternatives? Well, Saints Row is an old game, which means that setting your own bindings is off the table. We've got Scheme A, Scheme B, or Scheme C. The default is Scheme A, which is a bad option. With Scheme B, you can flip the options so the acceleration is on the trigger and shoot is on the A button, which is still not ideal, but it's definitely better. You're just going to have to deal with the muscle memory that says A is the handbrake and shoot a couple of rounds every time you take a fast corner. And then Scheme C is just the same as Scheme A, but with some other buttons messed around with. How did we ever live like this? It's not like this is a badly optimized console port or something. Saints Row was an Xbox exclusive. This is the only intended way to play. The obvious solution to this, which every other game in the series realised, is to put shoot on the bumper. That way you can easily shoot, drive and turn the camera with a dedicated finger to each. In a way that I cannot capture with just game footage, shooting and driving at the same time in this game is just terrible. Which is bad because half of the missions in the game were about car chases and drive-bys. Was this tangent too niche? I'm starting to suspect I've spent a little bit too much time talking about control schemes. It's not something I'd normally bring up, but trust me, when you're actually playing the game, it's all you can focus on. Maybe that's intentional. Maybe they want you focusing on this issue instead of... So the story of Saints Row is split into 3 parts, one for each of the rival gangs you'll be taking down. There is the Vice Kings, the most traditional street gang of the bunch, mostly big black dudes wearing bandanas and baggy jeans. Okay, to be fair, everyone in the game is wearing baggy jeans, there's literally no non-baggy options. They're led by Benjamin King, the coolest guy in the entire world.
How did this happen?
How the fuck you think it happened? Look, we need to get together here and just...
What we need is for you to shut the fuck up, you feel me?
Yeah.
What?
Yes, Mr. King.
In case you can't tell, that's the late, great Michael Clark Duncan, because this game has an absolutely stacked cast. Keith David, Daniel Day Kim, Clancy Brown, David Carradine, Mila Kunis is in this game. She's playing a character we're not talking about yet. The other gangs are Los Carnales, a fairly standard riff on Spanish drug cartels led by the Lopez brothers. And finally, there's the Rollers, because Fast and Furious had come out recently. They're led by Joseph Price. To take down these gangs, Julius assigns a lieutenant of the Saints to each. For the Rollers, it's Lynn, a no-nonsense lady racer who's gone undercover with the Rollers. For the Carnales, it's Dex, an ambitious but highly logical gangster. And for the Vice Kings, he assigns Troy, the bland white guy, but he turns it down, so instead we get Johnny Gat, the hot-headed lovable sociopath. Each campaign's tone is defined by the person handing out the missions. The Rollers is all about espionage, sneaking around and disrupting deals. The Carnales is a tactical war back and forth with Dex, who's smart but also in slightly over his head. And then the Vice Kings is mostly chaos and mayhem, because Johnny doesn't plan anything and just goes in guns blazing. Despite that, the story of each is pretty rigorously structured. Each mission represents one district of the city, and so with each mission you're slowly and methodically growing the influence of the Saints, painting the map purple. It's a compelling format that every game in the series has adapted in its own way, taking over the city, one block at a time. Structurally, it's great. Character-wise, Saints Row has a real knack for writing compelling characters. Even though cutscenes are usually quite short and utilitarian, they inject just enough personality, carried by the aforementioned stacked cast, that all of the Saints really shine through. Less so for the villains, but they have their moments too. There's just one problem, an element of the game I've left unsaid so far, a question that probably should have been asked in 2006, but as far as I can tell, nobody did, so I guess it falls to me. Is this okay?
Man, fuck the Rollers.
LeVar, you gonna let those bitches disrespect us?
Shit, what you think?
Saints Row leans so hard into urban gangster and hip-hop stereotypes that this is the kind of game where everyone holds their guns sideways, gangsta style. You don't have friends, you have homies, where you go and smoke a blunt with the boys back at the crib, and oh my god, I've never sounded so white in my entire life. In case it wasn't obvious for a game made in 2006, Saints Row was made by a team of almost entirely 30-something nerdy white guys. My people. And let me tell you, playing it nowadays, it is so obvious. Its idea of this culture is so obviously a construct of TV shows and movies that the writers have watched with absolutely no basis in reality. I do not believe for 1 second that anyone in the writer's room has ever stepped foot in the black part of town. And just so we're crystal clear, neither have I. I'm as white as they come. I don't even have a black friend to prove how not racist I am. But I'm also not writing a video game about black gangster culture. I'm not going to go so far as to say that the game is racist. In fact, the game is surprisingly racially diverse for the time. While each of the rival gangs are made up of a specific racial group, the Saints are extremely diverse in a very casual way that's never made a big deal of outside of the occasional joke.
Put these on.
I'm yellow enough as it is, Dex.
Just put the damn shirt on.
It is, however, unquestionably cultural appropriation, an extremely loaded term these days, but that's what it is. The cast may be ethnically diverse, but they're speaking the lines of a white guy, and they throw out the N-word a lot.
Every motherfucker here knows what we need to do. Now those bitches be riding around here thinking they own these streets. I don't care what flags they flying. Rollers, Carnales, Vice Kings. No one's making this nigga scared to walk the road. We about to lock this shit down right now.
Is this okay? I don't know. I don't feel qualified to answer that question, but it's not something I've ever seen brought up before, because reviews at the time were far too concerned with how the game rips off GTA to explore this very explicit element of the game beyond a nod at the hip-hop culture. God, games journalism used to suck. I don't know. I can only tell you my personal experience. My favourite radio station in the game is WMD K-Boom. It's a parody of conservative talk radio that is shockingly on point even 15 years later, because they've really just been using the same talking points for the last 15 years, probably the last 30 years, who am I kidding?
Flag burning. Big controversial subject here in this country and around the world, because they know that it's a controversial subject here. We see all these terrorist dudes all over the place burning our flags. And it's like, is it really any skin off your nose?
It shouldn't even be controversial. It just should be, don't do it, period. That's it.
Yeah, if you do it, we invade your country.
Yes.
And we grab your oil.
Yeah, and well, it's really our oil. We're the ones who need it, and we're the ones who use it.
That's true.
They just happen to have the land it's on.
Right, and I don't know what that's all about, but that's another day.
It's one of the more subtle elements of humour in a game that's mostly full of crass, over-the-top nonsense. Like, they thought Clockenbell was too subtle, so the fast food chain here is called Freckle Bitches. The humour is very hit or miss, but the Mike and Dave show got a fair few laughs out of me, I have to admit.
And again, I don't understand why they keep portraying these old white men in these games as buffoons that repeat themselves. I don't understand.
Yeah.
I do not get that at all.
I would say that it's reinforcing a stereotype, except it's not even a stereotype. It's like they're trying to make it a stereotype by putting it in every single game.
They're forcing it.
Yeah, they're making us be loud and boisterous and buffoons, and that we repeat ourselves. We don't repeat ourselves. Why would they say that?
I don't know why they'd say that. I don't. Do you?
No, I don't get it.
I don't get it either, and I think that it has to change.
But looking at this more critically, here I am, in this game, playing a guy who regularly listens to conservative talk radio while mowing down gangs of minorities in baggy jeans and do-rags, and it just feels so uncomfortable. One thing Saints Row does borrow from GTA is that crass, hyper-offensive attitude that's supposed to somehow shield it from criticism. But in all the years we've been bandying that argument about, I've never actually understood why that's supposed to make it okay. If something is supposed to offend the normies, and it does, why is that good? Why is being offensive the goal that we're trying to accomplish here? I think there's a discussion to have here, and the franchise's move away from this aesthetic to something more neutral shows that maybe the developers had the same concerns. I actually don't think Saints Row is nearly as bad as GTA when it comes to racial insensitivity. Where Saints Row all goes massively down the drain is when we talk about women. I may hesitate to call this game racist, but I will absolutely not hesitate to call this game unbelievably sexist.
Angelo, I need you to go to the lab tonight. One of our shipments didn't arrive, and I want to make sure no one's skimming off the top.
No problem.
Angelo, you promised we'd go shopping tonight.
It's hard to know where to even begin on this subject, because the best proof I could give you is just to show you the entire game. Like, okay, you've probably heard of a thing called the Bechdel test. It's a very common thing in feminist film criticism. Does the film contain a scene where two female characters talk about something other than a man? That might sound really basic to you, but Saints Row fails at the first hurdle because there's never a scene where two women talk. And yeah, the Bechdel test isn't a perfect way to examine if something is sexist or not, but I'm using it to point out that on the most basic, fundamental level, Saints Row completely fails to account for its female characters. While the player is fully customizable, that comes with the major caveat that they are a fully customizable man. You cannot play as a woman in this game because the assumption is that only men will be playing this game. And frankly, after playing the game, I'm not sure I disagree. There are 4 major female characters in the game, 1 for each gang. The Carnales have Luz, a stereotypical materialistic hot girlfriend who cares more about buying shoes than the gang war her boyfriend is currently in, and who Angela Lopez and the Colombian drug lord have a dick measuring contest over who can please her more. There's literally a scene where Angelo won't let her stop sucking his dick while he's getting the phone call that his brother has just been murdered. It is so unbelievably cringe. The Saints have Aisha, an R&B singer who you help fake the death of so she can get out of a corrupt record deal with the Vice Kings. After that though, she just becomes this incredibly stereotypical girlfriend of Johnny Gat that constantly nags him for not taking her out to nice places for dinner. The Vice Kings have Tanya, the aforementioned character voiced by Mila Kunis, and she is just a fucking disaster, and I mean that literally. She dresses like this, and her entire arc revolves around the fact that she's sleeping with both of King's lieutenants to manipulate them into doing what she wants. She eventually ends up taking over the gang and ends up being thrown from a 40-story building, but not before this immortal line.
I'm gonna skull fuck that bitch.
Hope you don't mind hepatitis.
What?
It's not just that the characters disrespect women. The entire Everything disrespects women, as proven by our last lady, Lynn, for the Rollers. Lynn is in many ways the most disappointing of the bunch, because she's the only one with the potential to be more than a stereotype. She is a stereotype, she's a typical take-no-nonsense, get-it-done lady in the vein of basically every character Michelle Rodriguez has ever played. But that also means she's the only character who actually acknowledges how sexist everything is, and she has 2 separate scenes where she punches a guy in the face for making an inappropriate comment.
I didn't think the Rollers pimped hoes.
Any other comments? I'm the best racer that ever came out of Chinatown.
How come I've never heard of you?
'Cause I got tits.
Is that what you call those?
As part of her infiltration, she buddies up with Donnie, a soft boy mechanic who works for the Rollers, and they actually have an interesting dynamic where even though she's a spy, she starts sticking up for him when creepy Uncle William picks on him. Of course, all of this is way too much agency and personality for women to have, so halfway through the Rollers story, she's captured, exploited, and unceremoniously killed.
Look at you, all tied up pretty as a present. I think it's time to unwrap you.
If they were going to do it like this, they could have at least committed to the bit and stuffed her in a fridge. Don't worry though, you can call up a voodoo place and have her brought back as a zombie, where you can oogle at her practically exposed zombie tits. This is how the game treats its named female characters. Let's talk for a second about the rest of the game, because yes, I mentioned the side mission where you kill pimps and steal their hookers, right? Well, somehow it's even worse than that.
What's going on, bro? Julius called and said you might be stopping by. Look, you looking for a little something? Because if so, I can let Peggy over there give you a ride. Yeah, I didn't think so. Look, brother, I gotta be honest. I'm trying to get a business started here, but right now the only hoe I got is so fugly blind motherfuckers turn her down. Now, if you could bring me back some of them fine bitches who are turning tricks to other pimps, I'd be able to start seeing some real money.
Yeah, of course we're adding body shaming to the list, that's not shocking, but that's also not even what I meant.
I don't know what you want, but whatever it is, I ain't got it. Look around, hun. I think you'll notice a distinct lack of pussy. Some fucking pimps from out of town are trying to put me out of business. They took most of my stable, and now they're even asking me to go back hoeing for them. You believe that shit? Until you can go out there and bring my girls back, I can't help you.
They took her stable? Like they're horses? Jesus Christ. There's no gentle way to put this. This is literally gamified sex trafficking. Sure, there's the idea thrown in there that the pimps you're killing are abusive, so this is some kind of rescue mission. But when you're bringing them back to this fucking guy, I don't think that defense holds a lot of weight. It goes way beyond crass and edgy into being downright uncomfortable to play. And this game mode sticks it out until Saints Row 3, 2011, and we're still doing this. I don't think this gets said enough. Thank God for Anita Sarkeesian and other women who started calling out this bullshit. You want to talk about ethics and games journalism? A game with a sex trafficking minigame was released, and all the journalists at the time could care about was how the gameplay is a little bit too similar to Grand Theft Auto. Saints Row is a good game. I think it holds up surprisingly well. But shit like this is why I cannot recommend that you'd actually play it. It's so uncomfortable to sit through, so unbearably hateful with its approach towards women, that it detracts from anything that the game actually gets right. It's not about being offended. I'm not offended by any of this. I'm not a woman. Writing women this way isn't bad because it's offensive. Well, okay, it's not bad just because it's offensive. It's bad because it's just bad. If every female character in the game is just a paper-thin caricature, then every woman in the game is just an incredibly boring cliché. Not to mention the unbearable cringe. It's an 18+ game that caters only to an audience of, like I said, horny 13-year-olds. And the kind of people who still think a woman being fat is a funny enough joke to land on its own. Well, it's not. When I was 10 playing this game, obviously all of this stuff went over my head. But as an adult with a brain who can discern good media from bad, this stuff is just so roll your eyes dull. And to preempt your "it was a different time" comments about how I can't criticise the game from my modern enlightened perspective, guess what? Women still existed in 2006, and women still played video games in 2006. The idea of gaming as a male-centric hobby has always been nonsense, and just because we're finally reaching a point where games are more inclusive of all people doesn't mean that it was acceptable back then. People just didn't call it out very much because when you did, you got gamergated. When it came to remastering Season, Deep Silver Volition skipped Saints Row 1 and 2 and jumped straight to the third. There's a lot of confusion over why they would do that, but I think the answer is here. Saints Row the third is still edgy and crass, but it's edgy and crass in a more inclusive way. To make this game palatable to a modern audience would require much more than a shiny coat of paint. You would need a full rewrite of the script from the ground up to account for the fact that women are more than just annoying nags, innocent girlfriends, or sex objects. That's not to say it couldn't be done. In fact, maybe we should go full Resident Evil here, because I think somewhere in this mess there is a game worth saving. The story, like a lot of open world games from the time, is an excuse to string together different kinds of level design, but the characters, especially the Saints, really do shine through. Johnny Gat was always a fan favourite and became something of a mascot for the franchise, but the rest of the crew all get their moments to shine. The conversations are snappy, and every member is clearly defined, so their personalities clash in interesting ways. With Troy, the bland white guy, there's even an extra level because he's an undercover cop, and once you know that twist, there's a whole bunch of clues towards it in the game. I mean, besides the obvious clue that he's the whitest guy you've ever seen. Julius is probably the most interesting character, and not just because he's voiced by Keith David, although that obviously helps. He's the only character that really has an arc across the game, and it's primarily explored with the Vice King's missions. Julius and Ben King were old friends. They grew up together and formed the Vice Kings together in order to fight back against the Carnales, who ran the city at the time. But as the gang got bigger, they got more and more into criminal ventures, and Julius and King had a falling out. 20 years later, and Saints Row is a battlefield between three gangs, and so Julius gets a terrible idea. The Vice Kings just became part of the problem. But maybe he can learn from past mistakes, fight fire with fire, but don't become part of the problem. But it doesn't work. The Saints just make all the same mistakes again. But because it happens slowly, it's already too late by the time that's clear. They start with fighting back against the gangs, but soon they're getting involved with the drug trade, with protection rackets, with armed robbery. Same shit, new colours. History just repeated itself, all thanks to you. Julius promotes you to his right-hand man, but as he does, Troy's operation comes into full swing and he's arrested. The chief of police and some asshole politician tried to blackmail you in order to win an election, but after you murder the chief of police, the politician wants to talk to you. He explains how easy you've made it for him. His plans to refurbish Saints Row used to be him displacing poor people. Now it's him cleansing the city of a gang hotbed. He plans to murder you, but he gets beaten to it. Julius detonates a bomb on board the yacht, killing you both. The other Saints might be talked down, but you're a murderous, greed-driven sociopath. You literally have no character outside of that. You would never give this life up. It's why you're playing the game, after all. Some people don't like this ending, and it is quite abrupt, but to me there's really no other way it could have ended. For the open world of a crime simulator, the player is the most dangerous person alive, and things cannot end until they're gone. The ending leaves enough hooks for a sequel to use, but it's also perfectly conclusive for the story of this game. If it was a one and done, it would have been satisfying enough. As the start of a decade-long franchise, it's more of a speed bump on the way to bigger and stranger things. Nostalgia's a funny thing. It's very hard to turn off. So even though I've been very harsh towards this game, I don't know if it's possible for me to ever view it without rose-tinted glasses. It'll forever be associated with good memories of me goofing around with my brother, of us spending hours and hours customizing cars and picking out silly outfits, of the sheer joy when we finally bet that last Carnales mission. I'm a different person from the kid in those memories. I've grown out of a lot of what Saints Row has to offer. And yet, I'm not willing to fully condemn it. Instead, I want to look for the good. The design philosophy, everything matters. It's set a new standard for what these games are, a format that's stuck around to this day. History always remembers the first of something, and GTA will always hold that title. But just because something wasn't first doesn't mean it's not important, doesn't mean it doesn't impact the future. We can choose to remember Saints Row as a GTA clone cashing in on a trend, or we can choose to remember it as a full game on its own merits, with its own achievements, and its own problems. I choose the latter. You probably shouldn't play this game. It's crass, tasteless, and well past its sell-by date. But you should remember this game. It opened up the world to everything we have today.
So I figured I'd cut the middleman and get right to the point.
Yo, can you speed this shit up? I want to go to Freckle Bitches.
Thank you very much for watching, and a very special thank you, as always, to my lovely patrons who make this stuff possible. As you may have guessed, I'm doing all of them, and if you want to stay tuned for that, the best thing you can do is like, comment, and subscribe. I've previously done deep dives into the Borderlands franchise and the Batman Arkham games, which you can find up here, or if you're looking for something different, down here is whatever the YouTube gods recommend to you. Stay safe out there, playa.